The Amazon rainforest looks solid from space, a single endless carpet of green stretching from horizon to horizon. But pictures from satellites never show you the heat that sits on your skin, or the smell of wet soil and leaves decomposing into new life, or the way the forest sometimes feels like it is listening. On the morning the story really begins, the forest was listening. Anna sat by the oval airplane window, forehead leaned against the cool plastic, looking down at the vast green below. From this height, the Amazon looked calm. From this height, it was easy to pretend everything was fine. Her laptop balanced on the tiny tray table, a LiDAR image glowing on the screen. It was a patchwork of bright and dark pixels, a ghostly map revealing the shapes under the forest canopy. She zoomed in slowly, and there it was again. Straight lines, perfect angles, curves too clean to be natural. Roads, platforms, maybe even pyramids. Still looking at that ghost city? A voice shouted over the engine noise. She glanced up. Across the narrow aisle, Dr. Malik, archaeologist, professional skeptic, walking encyclopedia, was smirking at her. His grey-streaked hair was pulled back into a low knot, and the crow's feet at the corners of his eyes had deepened in the last few years. "I keep hoping I'm wrong," Anna shouted back, "that it's just weird erosion or software artifacts." "And yet you bought a ticket to the middle of nowhere to chase it," Malik said, "so you're not hoping too hard." She smiled despite herself and turned back to the window. She wasn't just chasing data, she was chasing a feeling. When she was a kid in Manaus, her grandmother had told her stories about cities hidden in the forest. Cities of stone and gold and light, swallowed by vines and trees, waiting for the right eyes to find them again. As she grew up, the stories faded behind more urgent things: exams, rent, deadlines. She became a journalist, then a filmmaker, telling hard stories about deforestation, indigenous resistance, and the politics of land that made most viewers uncomfortable. But the forest never really left her. It lived in the background of every story, every frame. 2 months ago, a friend at a mapping company had slipped her a file with a grin and a warning. "Off the record, okay? This is from a LiDAR sweep commissioned for some big infrastructure study. They're looking for places to put a highway or a railway, who knows? But look at this," he had said, pointing. Lines under the trees, geometric patterns, rectangular platforms, a perfect circle connected to long, straight causeways. "It's like a city," she had whispered. "Or like 5 cities," he had replied, "and nobody's talking about it. Officially, this region is just buffer forest, empty, disposable." She had gone home that night with her heart beating too fast, the old stories lighting up in her chest. For days, she tried to ignore it. Then she sent an email to Malik with the subject line, "You're not going to believe this." Now here they were, in a small charter plane heading toward coordinates that, according to satellite data, old myths and nervous silence from the government, shouldn't exist. The pilot shouted something about turbulence. The plane dipped slightly, then steadied. Clouds parted, and for a moment the view below sharpened. Anna's breath caught. From up here, the forest canopy looked like it always did, dense, unbroken, but if she squinted, if she let her eyes relax the way she had learned to do when looking at 3D illusions, she could see it. Slight variations in texture, faint curves where the tree line bent around something. She snapped a few photos out of habit. "This is your last chance to back out," Malik said lightly. "We could go back to Manaus, drink cold beer, and write a very respectable paper about how dangerous it is to go on expeditions without proper funding." "We both know you'd be on the next flight back in," she replied. "True," he admitted. "You've become very annoying with this whole purpose thing, you know." She smiled, then turned serious. "If those structures are real, Malik, they change everything. About how we talk about the Amazon, about the people who lived here. It's not just isolated villages and small tribes. It's cities, networks, maybe even something more advanced than we thought possible." "Careful," he said. "You're starting to sound like a YouTube conspiracy channel." If it helps people pay attention, maybe that's not such a bad thing, she shot back. The pilot's voice cut through on the intercom. We're approaching, rough strip ahead. Hold on to whatever you love. The landing strip, when it appeared, was barely more than a scar in the green, a thin stretch of packed dirt, flanked by nervous trees. The plane bounced hard as it touched down, rattling every bone in Anna's body. When they finally rolled to a stop, the forest closed in around them like a curtain. The door opened. Heat and humidity slammed into them like a living thing. Anna stepped out and was immediately wrapped in the smell of wet leaves, earth, and something sweet and decaying. The air was thick. Every sound was magnified, the distant screech of a bird, the incessant buzz of unseen insects, the whisper of leaves rubbing against each other high above. A figure waited by the edge of the strip, leaning casually against a tree. Woman, late 20s, maybe early 30s, brown skin, dark hair in a single thick braid, loose shirt, sturdy pants, boots caked with dried mud. A woven bracelet of red, black and white threads circled her wrist. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, amused. "Ana Carvalho?" she asked. That's me," Anna said, adjusting her pack. "I'm Tainá," the woman said, "the one who is supposed to stop you from getting lost, bitten, cursed, or very dead. No promises, but I'll try." "They told you we were coming?" Malik asked, grabbing his own gear. "No," Tainá said. "I dreamed you first. The radio call came later." She let that sit for a moment before smiling slyly. "Come on, the forest is waiting, and it doesn't like to be kept." They loaded their packs into a small aluminum boat, tied up at a muddy inlet nearby. The river was narrower here, more like a broad, slow vein than a highway. Trees leaned over the water, forming a tunnel of leaves. Sunlight scattered in warm fragments on the surface. As Tainá steered them away from the strip and deeper into the green, Anna felt the rest of the world peel away. Phone signal, gone. Internet, gone. Emails, notifications, deadlines, the constant noise of the city all fell off like dead leaves. "What did they tell you about us?" Anna asked, raising her voice over the motor. "That you were stubborn," Tainá replied, eyes on the river. "That you had maps of things that aren't there, and that you'd pay well not to be abandoned halfway." "And you?" Malik asked. "What do you think we're looking for?" Tainá tilted her head. "My grandmother called this region the place that remembered too much," she said. "Some people call it cursed. Others call it holy. I think it's tired of being ignored." She glanced back at Anna. "The satellite doesn't see everything, and it doesn't always understand what it sees. The forest decides what to show." Anna felt a shiver despite the heat. "How far to the base?" she asked. 3 hours by river, then we walk," Tainá answered. "There's an old research station, mostly abandoned. A good place to leave things we don't want the forest to eat." "Comforting," Malik muttered. As they traveled, the river widened, then narrowed again, twisting between banks lined with roots like gnarled fingers. They passed a giant ceiba tree whose buttressed roots rose like walls. Monkeys crashed playfully through branches overhead. A pair of macaws crossed the sky in a streak of red and blue. Anna filmed everything. The camera wasn't just a tool for later. It was a shield, a way to process the overload of color, sound, and history pressing in around her. Through the lens, she could pretend she was only observing, not part of the story. "You know the stories about this place?" Tainá asked at one point. "About what, exactly?" Anna replied. "We've heard a lot of stories." "The city underneath," Tainá said simply. Anna and Malik exchanged a look. "You're talking about the lost city of gold," Malik said. "El Dorado, Paititi, we've been chasing those for centuries. They tend to end badly." Tainá shook her head. "El Dorado is a misunderstanding," she said. "Outsiders hear a word and build a fantasy. What my people talk about is different. We say there was a city here, yes. Big, bright, full of life and knowledge. But the real treasure wasn't gold. It was how they talked to the forest." "How they talked to it?" Anna asked. "Yes," Tainá said. "Not like you and I are talking now. Not with words, with seeds, with water, with time. They learned how to build with the forest, not on top of it. Some people call that technology too. A different kind. And what happened to them? Malik asked, genuinely curious now. That's the part no one agrees on, Tainá said. Some say they vanished into the ground and the city folded itself under the roots. Some say the forest took them back because they went too far. Some say they're still here, just slightly out of sight. Well, Malik said, let's hope they're in the mood for visitors. Or at least for being filmed, Anna added. Tainá smiled without turning. The forest always films you back. The research station was little more than a cluster of elevated wooden structures linked by narrow walkways. Old solar panels decorated the roof of the main building like tired shields. A rusted satellite dish leaned at a hopeless angle. The jungle had already started reclaiming the place. Vines crawled up pylons, moss softened the edges of steps, tiny plants sprouted from cracks in the boards. Cozy, Malik said, stepping carefully onto the main platform. No jaguars inside, Anna asked. Not unless they've learned to use door handles, Tainá replied. But check for spiders before you sit anywhere, and snakes before you put your boots on. They set up their gear in what had once been a lab, a long open room with dusty tables, a couple of dead monitors, and a whiteboard covered in faded scribbles. A few old sample jars still sat in a corner, their labels peeling. Edna placed her cameras and batteries carefully. Malik unrolled maps and spread them on a table. Tainá checked the gas stove and water filter with the efficiency of someone who knew how it felt to depend on them. Night fell quickly. One moment the sky was merely dim. The next it was thick black, pierced by a scatter of stars where gaps appeared in the canopy. The forest's soundtrack shifted into its nocturnal mix. Deeper calls, steadier insect hums, occasional distant howls. They sat around a small gas lantern, eating rice and beans from metal bowls. So, Malik said between bites, tomorrow we walk into the forest in search of an invisible city that may or may not exist, in a region your people say remembers too much, based on maps that governments are pretending don't exist. Sounds like a typical Tuesday. You can stay here and catalogue spiders, Anna said. I'm sure there are hundreds. Oh no, he replied. If there's a chance I get to say I told you so in front of the world when we find a major pre-Columbian urban complex, I am not staying behind. Tainá watched them with a small, private smile. You joke because you're scared, she said. That's good. People who walk into the forest without fear don't come back. Are you scared? Anna asked, genuinely curious. Tainá was quiet for a long moment. I grew up hearing that the forest is our mother, our home, our teacher, she said. But my father worked for a logging company. I saw what happens when you cut into a body that big. The forest bleeds slowly but deeply. Parts of it go quiet. Other parts scream louder. That's not myth, that's sound. She looked out into the dark, where countless unseen eyes might be watching. I'm afraid of what we'll find, she added finally, and of what we won't. Inna felt something twist inside her chest. Later, alone in her small room with a sagging bed and a mosquito net, she lay awake, listening to the night. The LiDAR images swam behind her closed eyes. The faint outlines of roads and platforms, the ghost circle at the center of it all. Her grandmother's stories overlapped with the data, old words for new shapes. You're going to see something, Menina, her grandmother had told her once. One day the forest will show you a secret, and then you'll never be able to pretend you didn't see it. What if I don't want secrets? She had replied, about 10 years old and already tired of carrying too much. Her grandmother had laughed softly. The forest doesn't ask if you're ready, she'd said. It asks if you're listening. In the dark, Anna whispered to no one, I'm listening. Sleep finally came, heavy and restless. They set out at dawn. Mist clung to the ground, curling around their boots like pale smoke. The air was cool, the sun just a hazy suggestion behind the trees. Tainá carried a small backpack with water, snacks, extra batteries, and a compact camera. Malik had his notebook, a handheld GPS, and a stubborn determination to prove that archaeology in the Amazon deserved more than a footnote in global history. Tainá carried a machete, a small woven bag, and an ease in her movements that made the others look clumsy. The path wasn't a path in the usual sense. It was a suggestion, a slightly less dense line through the forest, a memory of someone having walked here long ago. Roots twisted underfoot, leaves brushed their faces. Spiders had woven fine, invisible threads between branches overnight, and Anna kept running into them, wiping her face with a grimace. As they walked, Tainá pointed out things Anna's city-trained eyes would have missed: a barely visible animal trail, a plant whose crushed leaves could stop bleeding, a beetle that supposedly carried rumors between trees. "You're making that up," Malik said when she mentioned the beetle. "Am I?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "You're the man following invisible cities. Tell me again which one of us is making things up." They moved deeper. Slowly, the forest began to change. The trees grew more uniform in height, spaced more regularly than random growth would allow. The underbrush thinned slightly, making it easier to move. Large trees appeared in patterns that, if you put them on a map, would have looked suspiciously like rows and grids. "Do you see it?" Malik murmured after a while. Anna nodded. Her camera recorded everything, but her mind processed more: the subtle shift from chaos into order, from organic randomness into something designed. Her GPS beeped weakly in her pocket. "No signal?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "It's there," Malik replied, frowning at his device. "But it's off. We're close to the center of the LiDAR pattern. Whatever's under us is messing with it." The air felt thicker. Sounds seemed slightly muted, as if they were walking into a room with padded walls. "Here," Tainá said, suddenly stopping. They stood in what, to an untrained eye, would look like an ordinary clearing. Trees ringed the space, their trunks tall and straight. The ground underfoot was firm, free of large roots, covered in a thin layer of leaf litter. But when Anna brushed the leaves aside with her boot, something solid gleamed faintly beneath. Her heart lurched. They knelt together and cleared away more leaves, careful, almost reverent. There it was, stone. Not rough, irregular stone, smooth, cut stone. A block at least 2 meters long, its surface carved with shallow lines that formed a repeating pattern. Spirals inside squares, squares inside circles. The symbols looked both familiar and alien, as if someone had taken geometric motifs from a dozen ancient cultures and rearranged them into a new language. "Oh my God," Malik whispered. The words slipped out of him like a prayer. "This is monumental architecture in the middle of supposedly untouched forest." He ran his fingers along the symbols. "The erosion is strange," he added. "This hasn't been exposed for very long. The forest covered it, protected it." Anna filmed, her hands shaking slightly. "This is it," she whispered. "We're standing on something big." "On the outskirts," Malik said. He pointed ahead. "Look." At the far side of the clearing, on a slight rise, another block peeked out from the soil. And beyond that, through the trees, Anna could see the subtle suggestion of shape. A straight line where the ground gently sloped up like the edge of a buried platform. As they moved forward, more appeared. Fragments of walls, edges of terraces, steps half swallowed by earth and roots. The forest had blurred their outlines, but the geometry still shone through like bone under skin. "This wasn't a village," Malik said, or softening his usual sarcasm. "This was a city, or at least part of a network of them, roads, plazas, platforms. The population density, it could have rivaled some of the so-called great civilizations elsewhere. And yet," Anna said quietly, "history books barely mention this region as anything other than remote tribal land." "They will," Malik replied, "if you do your job." She swallowed. Her job, to capture, to tell, to make people care. "The circle is ahead," Tainá said softly. Her tone had changed. The joking had drained out of it. "How do you know?" Malik asked. "I can feel it," she replied simply, "like standing outside a door." They climbed a slight incline, pushing aside ferns and younger saplings. The air grew cooler. A faint vibration tickled Anna's skin, like a barely audible sub-bass note. Then they stepped into the circle. The clearing here was almost perfectly round. The trees at its edge leaned slightly away, their branches arching overhead but not fully closing. Sunlight poured into the space in a clean column, illuminating dust motes and tiny flying insects that looked like captured sparks. In the center of the clearing, slightly raised above the surrounding ground, was a platform. At first glance, it could have been mistaken for a natural rock outcrop, smoothed by time. But as they approached, the details resolved. The surface was smooth, almost polished, not grey like typical stone, but a warm, faintly golden color, as if a mineral rich in iron and something else had been carefully shaped. Patterns were carved into it, concentric circles intersected by lines that radiated outward like spokes. At the very center, a shallow, bowl-like depression held a thin layer of dark water, perfectly still despite the occasional breeze. The air hummed. Tainá felt it in her bones, in the fillings in her teeth, in her heartbeat. "This is extraordinary," Malik said quietly. He was beyond excited now. He was reverent. "This isn't just architecture. This is instrumentation, ceremony, maybe both." "Do you feel it?" Anna whispered. "Yes," he replied. "I meant you, Tainá," she said. Tainá had stopped at the edge of the clearing. Her shoulders were square, hands at her sides, eyes darker than Anna had seen them. "Yes," she said, "too much." She stepped forward slowly, as if each movement required permission. "My grandmother talked about this place," she said. "She said our ancestors came here when they needed to remember who they were. She said the city that was here learned to speak with the forest through places like this. They called them hearts, or ears, or both." "You believe that?" Malik asked gently. Tainá gave him a look. "I am standing in the middle of a legend," she said, "and your machines are too confused to tell you which way is north. Maybe it's time you start believing something." Tainá wanted to laugh or cry or both. "Can I?" she asked, gesturing to the central bowl. "Slowly," Tainá said, "with respect." Tainá stepped up onto the platform. The hum in the air intensified. Her camera hung forgotten around her neck. Up close, the bowl wasn't just a depression. Its inner walls were etched with fine lines that spiraled downward. The water inside looked normal at first glance, but as she leaned over, she realized it reflected nothing. Not the sky, not the trees, not her face. It was like looking into a dark hole that had politely disguised itself as a puddle. "It's like the water in those black rivers," Malik murmured, joining her, "the ones that absorb almost all light. But this is too pure." "Don't drink it," Tainá said sharply. "No problem," Anna muttered. The idea made her stomach twist. Some impulse she didn't fully understand made her extend her hand over the bowl. She didn't plan to touch it. She just wanted to feel how close she could get before the hum changed. It changed immediately. As her palm hovered a few centimeters above the surface, the vibration under her skin deepened. The hairs on her arms stood up. The water shivered once, almost imperceptibly. "Anna," Malik said, a warning in his voice. She knew she should pull back. Instead, her hand drifted lower, as if something was gently pulling it. Her fingertips brushed the surface. The world shattered. The forest disappeared. She stood in the same clearing, but it wasn't the same. The trees at the edge were thinner, younger. The air felt cleaner. The sunlight had a different quality, softer, less filtered. And people were everywhere. The city was alive. Structures rose beyond the edge of the clearing. Terraces covered in lush gardens, houses made of wood and stone and woven materials that blended with living trees. Elevated walkways connected different levels. Channels of water flowed along carefully shaped ditches. The platform she stood on now was not worn and lonely. It shone, its surface clean, the carved lines filled with a faint, moving light. At the edge of the clearing, a group of people approached. Their skin tones varied, their hair worn in different styles, their clothes woven from plant fibers, dyed in deep greens and blues and earth colors. They carried tools, baskets, knives, something like tablets carved from a material she couldn't identify. A woman stepped forward from the group. Her hair was streaked with silver, her face lined, but her posture was straight, her eyes clear. She wore a necklace of seeds and a small pendant shaped like a spiral inside a circle. "You're late," the woman said. Her mouth moved. The words were in no language Anna recognized, and yet she understood perfectly. "I'm not supposed to be here," Anna replied. Her own voice sounded strange in her ears, as if it echoed slightly. "None of us ever are," the woman said with a faint smile. "But here we are. You came to see if we really existed, if the stories were real." Anna's throat tightened. "Yes," she whispered. "Then look," the woman said, gesturing around them. "Look with the eyes you use for cameras, and the eyes you use for stories, and the eyes you don't admit you have." Anna looked. She saw how the city was built, not despite the forest, but with it. Trees grew through floor openings, their trunks embraced by carved supports. Roofs were layered with living plants. Vines had been trained to form natural barriers and arches. Water was guided gently, not confined brutally. She saw people working in gardens, where crops grew in dizzying diversity, each plant supporting another. She saw a group of children learning not from books, but under a large tree, touching its bark as an elder spoke softly, as if repeating what the tree had said first. She saw in flashes gatherings around the platform, people placing their hands over the central bowl, their faces going still, then changing, like someone hearing news from far away. She saw them adjusting their practices afterwards, burning less, planting more, moving settlements slightly when the forest asked. "It's technology," she said, "but not like we think of it. It's communication, feedback, collaboration." "Of course it is technology," the woman replied. "You think you invented that word?" "How does it work?" Anna asked, desperate. "Is it something alien, something from the stars, or did you build it alone?" The woman's gaze softened. "Everything is from the stars, Tainá," she said gently. "Your bones, these trees, this soil. The question you really mean is, did we have help from someone who wasn't born here?" Anna swallowed. "Did you?" The woman tilted her head, as if listening to something only she could hear. "Look again," she said. Images flooded Anna's mind, not in neat sequence, but in overlapping layers. Meteorites falling long ago, bringing strange minerals. People experimenting with stones that hummed when placed together in certain patterns. A long, slow learning process. Trial, error, intuition. Dreams guiding hands, subtle nudges from something that wasn't quite outside them, but not entirely inside either. "We were not children being given toys," the woman said, as if responding to Anna's thoughts. "We were partners in a conversation. The forest, the sky, the water, our own curiosity. Together we built ways to listen better, to remember better." "Remember what?" Anna asked. "The consequences," the woman answered simply. The scene shifted. She saw fields expanding too far, trees falling faster than they grew, water channels being altered more aggressively. She saw debates, heated, fearful, about how big the city should become, how much to extract, how fast to grow. She saw disagreements, pride, fear. She saw something else too, a sickness spreading through parts of the forest, a blight that made leaves curl and roots rot. At first it was small, manageable. Then, as people ignored warning signs, it spread. "What happened?" Anna whispered. "We forgot to listen," the woman said. "We were not destroyed by a punishment from outside. We crashed into the wall we had been told was there, and chose not to see." The blight spread through her mind like smoke. "The forest adapted," the woman continued. "It always does. But we lost much, too much. The city that was our pride became our weight. So we did something very difficult for a species like ours." "What?" Anna asked. "We stopped," the woman said simply. "We stepped back, we shrank. We allowed the city to be eaten slowly. We left behind places like this, hearts, ears, mirrors, for the next ones to find. In dreams, in myths, in data." The scene blurred. The city faded, replaced by layers of time. The platform being reclaimed, trees closing in, people passing through centuries later, leaving offerings, telling stories about the place that remembers too much. Explorers glimpsing the circle from a distance and turning away, spooked by malfunctioning compasses. Jets flying overhead, their instruments flickering for a second. The woman's face came back into focus. "You stand where we stood," she said, "with different machines, different gods, different excuses, but the wall is the same. The question is the same." "What question?" Anna asked, though she already knew. "How big can you become before you unravel what you depend on?" the woman replied. "How much can you take before you forget that you are made of what you're taking?" Anna felt a weight settle in her chest. "You can show all this to people," she said. "They'll still say it's just a story, just a hallucination, just, the woman repeated softly. "That word is a knife." She stepped closer. "We do not need all of them to believe," she said. "We need enough of them to remember. Stories are viruses. They spread, they wait, they find the ones with the right kind of fever." Anna laughed through the tightness in her throat. "What about you?" she asked. "What happened to you personally? Did you die here?" The woman smiled faintly. "I am a composite," she said. "An echo. The archive uses what you expect to see to show you what you need. In life, I was many people. Here, I am one voice, the forest, and your own mind built together. Do not waste too much time on me. Waste it on what you will do when you wake up." "Oh, when I wake up," Anna repeated. "Do you want to see one more thing?" the woman asked. Anna hesitated. "Will it break me?" "It might," the woman said, "or it might bend you in the right direction." "Show me," Anna said. The clearing changed again. She saw the same circle, the same platform. But now, trees around it were thinner, some cut down. There were flags of companies fluttering on metal poles, heavy machinery on the outskirts, people in hard hats and vests talking over blueprints. A survey marker hammered into the ground read something she recognized, the name of a massive agribusiness and mining consortium that had been lobbying to open underutilized forest for development. "Our government signed a concession here," she whispered. "They're going to build through this region, a road, a pipeline, maybe more." "Yes," the composite woman said calmly. "Your satellite data knows. Your friends in offices know. They told their bosses. Their bosses told them it is unavoidable progress." The machines in the vision moved forward, slow and clumsy and unstoppable. "And this place?" Anna asked, throat tight. "The platform, the archive." "Their machines would break it," the woman said. "They would not even realize what they had cracked. They would blame the strange malfunctions on cheap components, not on waking an old conversation they cannot hear." "Can't you stop them?" Anna asked. Whatever system is here, can't you turn the machines off, swallow them whole?" The woman's eyes grew very old. "We have limits," she said. "We are not gods. We are old tools. We can bend probabilities, nudge storms, make some people uneasy enough to stay home on certain days. But we cannot rewrite your choices. If we do too much, we break something important inside you." "What?" Anna demanded. "What's so important that it's worth risking this being destroyed?" "Responsibility," the woman said. "If everything is saved for you, you never have to grow up." Anna stared at the machines. "They'll be stopped," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "We'll show this place. We'll prove its importance. We'll—" The woman's gaze softened. "Maybe," she said quietly. "Maybe not. Maybe your film becomes a rallying cry and thousands stand between the forest and the machines. Maybe it gets buried in algorithms and only a few night owls watch it at 2 in the morning. Maybe both happen in different places." "That's not fair," Anna said, and she heard the child in her voice. "No," the woman agreed, "it isn't. Fairness is not one of the forest's rules. Balance is, connection is, consequence is." The machines froze. The scene stuttered, then rewound, slowed, branched. In one version, protests erupted early. International attention focused on this specific concession. Investors pulled out, muttering about reputational risk. The government quietly shifted plans elsewhere. In another, the protests came too late. The road cut a wound through the landscape. The platform was shattered. The hum went quiet. In a third, something stranger happened. The road was built, but the platform remained quietly nested under a bridge, its influence leaking into the systems built above it, subtly corrupting corruption, making certain deals fall through, certain projects mysteriously fail. The branches multiplied until Anna couldn't follow them anymore. "You see," the woman asked gently, "there is no single future waiting for you. There are many. Some of them hurt more than others. You move among them with every decision. So do we." Anna looked back at her. "What should I do?" she asked, hating how desperate she sounded. The woman reached out and placed a hand over Anna's heart. It felt warm, steady, real. "Tell the story like it matters," she said, "because it does. Use every tool you have, the camera, the data, the myths. Don't worry about whether people call it documentary, fiction, prophecy, or madness. Worry about whether it reaches the ones who need it." Her hand pressed once, firmly. "Remember that you are not separate from what you film," she added. "You are the forest, telling a story about itself." The world tilted. The clearing dissolved. The hum roared, then vanished. Ina jolted back into her body with a gasp. She was on her knees on the platform. Her hand was still in the bowl. Malik was gripping her shoulders, eyes wide with panic. Tainá knelt nearby, chanting under her breath in a language Anna didn't recognize. "Anna!" Malik shouted. "Anna, hey, you with us?" She sucked in a lungful of hot air. The forest crashed back into her senses, the smell of earth, the buzz of insects, the dull ache in her knees. "I'm here," she croaked. He let out a breath that sounded half like a laugh, half like a sob. "You were gone," he said, "for 20 seconds, maybe less, but your eyes, geez, your eyes were not here." "What did she say?" Tainá asked, voice low and urgent. "What did it show you?" Ina sat back heavily, pulling her hand from the bowl. The water looked perfectly ordinary now, reflecting a bit of sky and a crooked frame of leaves. "It showed me the city," she said softly. "How it used to be, how they talked to the forest, how they messed up anyway, how they pulled back." "And?" Malik asked. "And it knows about the concession," she said, "about the road, the pipeline, the projects they're planning here. It can't stop them on its own." She looked at both of them, her heart pounding. "It wants us to," she said. Malik stared at her. "Anna, listen, you might have had some sort of sensory overload, hallucination. This place could be emitting low frequency." "It was real," she said more fiercely than she expected. "As real as this, as real as you, as real as the LiDAR images you trusted enough to fly us here." He held her gaze. "Okay," he said finally. "Let's say I believe you, not because I know what you saw, but because I can't explain any of this either, and I'm tired of pretending we have all the right words." He stood, looking around the clearing with a new kind of awe. "Either way," he continued, "hallucination or not, that story you just told me about an ancient urban system that learned too late that it was overreaching, that's us, right now. That parallel is almost too neat." "Exactly," Anna said. "That's why we have to use it." "You're going to turn this into a film," Tainá said slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "People will watch it and think, what a beautiful story, what a scary future, what an amazing hidden city. And some of them," Anna said, "will think, we can't let that road happen. Not here, not like this. Some activists will use it to pressure companies. Some lawyers will use it to argue for protection. Some kids will watch it and decide their life's work, even if they don't know it yet." "You're very optimistic," Malik said. "No," she replied. "I'm very desperate, there's a difference. But I also know how stories work. They don't always move the target you aim at. They move sideways. They ricochet. They show up years later in someone else's mouth with a different soundtrack." Tainá nodded slowly. "My grandmother said this place makes you remember," she said. "Maybe it also makes you be remembered." They stayed in the clearing for a few more hours, documenting everything they could. Measurements, drawings, high-resolution footage, drone shots from just outside the anomaly zone where the interference was weaker. At one point, Anna stood on the edge of the platform, framing a shot, and felt something like a presence at her back. Not menacing, just watchful. "Thank you," she whispered over her shoulder. The hum deepened for a heartbeat like a response, then settled. The days that followed were a blur of jungle and data. They mapped more of the buried city, plazas hidden under roots, raised roads now masquerading as small ridges, irrigation channels filled with leaf litter but still visible if you knew how to look. Every night, back at the research station, Anna backed up footage and sketched timelines. Malik wrote page after page of notes, alternating between scientific terminology and wild metaphors. Tainá moved between them and the forest, making offerings at the edge of the clearing, speaking softly to trees in the early morning light. News trickled in via a crackling radio, official announcements about strategic development corridors, corporate press releases full of sustainability buzzwords, quiet rumors about political pressure and bribed officials. "We don't have much time," Malik said one evening, looking older than he had when they arrived. "Once they move in equipment, it'll be harder to stop." "Then we move faster," Anna replied. "We cut a rough version of the film as soon as we're back. We leak certain images early. We give interviews to anyone who will listen." "And you tell them about the visions?" Tainá asked. "About the archive?" Anna hesitated. "I tell them about the city," she said. "About the ancient urban network, the sustainable systems, the evidence of a sophisticated civilization that blows up the myth of empty forest. That alone should be enough to trigger protection fights. And the rest," Malik pressed gently. "The alien archive, the conversations with the forest, the future branches, those become story," she said, "wrapped inside the truth, not instead of it. People are strangely more open to inconvenient truths when they think they're watching fiction." Tainá smirked. "Tricking them into listening," she said. "I approve." "You're sure that's what it wants?" Malik asked, gesturing vaguely toward the forest. "I think it wants us to grow up," Anna said quietly. "To stop needing someone else to fix everything. It gave us a mirror. We decide what to see." On their last night in the station, the air felt uncannily still. Inna stepped outside alone, lantern in hand, and walked to the edge of the platform where the jungle began. Fireflies flickered like stray pixels in the dark. She closed her eyes and listened. In the distance, she could hear the river's slow breath, the rustle of small animals in the underbrush, the layered pulse of insects. Beneath all that, so deep she could almost convince herself she imagined it, was a low, steady hum. "Tomorrow we leave," she whispered, "but I'm going to carry you with me in the hard drive, in the story, in my bones." The hum didn't change. It didn't need to. "What if it doesn't work?" she asked the night. "What if the film is beautiful and moving, and 10 million people watch it, and the ones with power still shrug and build their road anyway?" For a moment, a memory rose, the composite woman's hand over her heart. Her words, "We do not need all of them to believe. We need enough of them to remember." "Right," Anna murmured. "Enough." She turned back to the station, the lantern's circle of light bobbing ahead of her. Somewhere, not far from where she walked, a circle of carved stone and humming alloy waited under the trees, listening as it had listened for thousands of years. Months later, in a city far from the forest, someone scrolling through videos late at night stumbled on a thumbnail. A dark green jungle, faint golden lines forming a circle beneath the canopy. Title, Aurelia, the secret city beneath the Amazon, full cinematic story. They hesitated for a second, thumb hovering, then tapped. The screen went dark, then filled with a slow aerial shot of the rainforest. A narrator's voice began to speak, soft and clear. The Amazon rainforest looks solid from space, a single endless carpet of green stretching from horizon to horizon. But the pictures from satellites never show you the heat that sits on your skin, or the smell of wet soil and leaves decomposing into new life, or the way the forest sometimes feels like it is listening. Maybe they watched for 5 minutes and clicked away. Maybe they watched the whole 80. Maybe they shared it with a friend. Maybe years later, when they sat in a meeting where a decision was being made about a project in some distant, unused forest, Something in them remembered the feeling of standing on that platform with Anna, seeing the living city in the past and the branching futures ahead. Maybe they hesitated. Maybe that hesitation nudged the decision 1 degree off its previous course. In the Amazon, degrees mattered. Under the trees, in the quiet of the clearing, the hummed memory of cities past and choices future continued. The forest remembered. The archive remembered. The people who had built Aurelia, real, mythologized, or both, remembered in the only way that mattered now, through the stories carried forward. And somewhere, in the way you are picturing all of this right now, the platform, the circle, the woman made of echo and archive, the machines at the edge, you are remembering too. For the forest, that was a start.